Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you very much for joining the webinar this morning. My name's Jen Williams. I'm Head of Security here at Lawyer Checker, and I'm going to hopefully give you a little bit of information this morning about what you can do if your law firm does fall victim to a cyber attack. So we're going to look a little bit about steps you can take to stop it happening in the first place, and then move on to how you can react if the worst should happen. So once again, thank you for joining. I'm happy to answer any questions that arise during the presentation. I'll do that via email afterwards if that's okay. So yeah, please feel free to send them in and I'll respond to as many as I can after the presentation. Let's get started. So first of all, a little bit about us. By the very virtue of the fact that you've joined this webinar today, I'm sure that you already know about Lawyer Checker and what Lawyer Checker can do to help you to prevent funds being lost. You may not know that we're also involved as part of the Practical Fusion Network in today's conveyancer. And we also have another publication called Today's Legal Cyber Risk, which is free to subscribe to. And the aim of that publication is to give you as much information as we can about risks specific to the legal sector that are happening in today's world of cybercrime. So please subscribe to those. It's totally free, and hopefully there'll be some really useful information on there for you. So a little bit about me. I'm the head of security here at Lawyer Checker. I've been with the business for about 5 years now. I'm from an IT background and have converted into security. So I'm a certified Cyber Essentials Plus assessor, which means that I go out and visit law firms and help to get them certified against Cyber Essentials Plus. I'm also involved in ISO 27001, which is an international gold standard for information security. And so far, I've helped around 70 law firms to get certified against Cyber Essentials. So it's really great to see that the legal market is starting to adopt these government recommended certifications. So a little bit then about the world of cybercrime and what's going on today. So it's generally accepted that nearly half of all businesses will at some point experience a successful cyber breach. So this is something that's happening all the time. There's plenty of high profile cases in the news. Actually, more and more smaller businesses are starting to be targeted now because they're less likely to have really good defences, and criminals know that. Europol say that they are currently aware of 1,400 crime gangs in the EU that are actively targeting mortgage funds. And worryingly, they also say that of those, 30 have the same powers of nation states. So there's a lot happening out there at the moment. The National Centre for Cyber Security, which is a government set up organisation to look after to protect the UK from cybercrime, they actually rank the legal sector as the highest risk sector at the moment, ahead of the financial services industry. So the National Cybersecurity Centre recognised that the legal sector is facing particular risks at the moment. So I'm sure everybody is aware of all of the common methods of attack. There's a lot of publicity about ways you might be attacked at the moment. I'm not intending to go through these in huge detail, but I think it's just important to acknowledge that these are some of the most common methods at the moment. So phishing and its text equivalent smishing. This is where a criminal will send an email or a text message to you to trick you into divulging information or passwords that they shouldn't have. You may also hear of email addresses being spoofed, where a criminal will send an email to your client from your exact email address, that has never passed through your IT infrastructure, and it may say something along the lines of, we've changed our bank account, please now transfer your funds here. That's incredibly easy for criminals to do. It's actually much simpler for them to do that than it is for them to set up a similar domain where maybe they've changed a letter, like an L to a 1. That's actually much harder work for them to do. So yeah, criminals are able to spoof your emails. They can also do the same with your text messages. So it's perfectly possible to send an SMS to somebody that looks as though it's come from you, and actually it hasn't. There are various types of malware attacks that have been recently publicised. So everybody will have heard of the WannaCry attack that happened on the NHS. By malware, we just mean any kind of program or infection that appears on your network that shouldn't be there. So we have various ransomware malware out there. There's loads of viruses. Malware just means something that a piece of software that shouldn't be on your infrastructure that appears there. One of the slightly more common methods of attack that maybe isn't considered as much is insider compromise. So this doesn't necessarily have to be a disgruntled leaving employee who wants to divulge lots of your data to your competitors. Insider compromise can happen totally by accident by staff who maybe aren't aware or have accidentally been left with permissions once they leave the business. So I think this is insider compromise is really important to consider when you're thinking about all of the more technical ways that you might be breached as well. Brute force, we see a lot of law firms who maybe don't enforce password policies to be as strong as they should be. A brute force attack is where a criminal will attempt to guess your password. So they'll try every single combination of letters and numbers and special characters, knowing full well that most people have the uppercase character at the start of their password. They often use the exclamation mark as a special character, and 1 is the most common number to be used, and it's always at the end of the password. Criminals know these trends, and they'll try to guess your password. The last one on this list is the denial of service attack. All that means is a criminal will overload one of your systems. So it will fire requests at your system to the point where it gets so overloaded that it times out and can't function. That happens to law firm websites on occasion. Again, at the bottom of the slide, I think this point's really important to note that email is always going to be the biggest weakness. So around 90% of cyber attacks today start with an email, whether that be a phishing email or a delivery of malware through an email. Email is the biggest cause of cyber attack. In an ideal world, we would live without emails. Unfortunately, in business, that can't really happen. Email's crucial, so we do need to protect emails. So one of the questions I get asked quite a lot is, well, what's that got to do with me? I've got an IT department to protect me from cyber attacks. Why do I need to know? My response would be, most IT technicians aren't cybersecurity experts. They are experts at running your IT. They're experts at keeping you up and running, and they're experts at keeping your infrastructure efficient and ticking over and enabling the business. Cybersecurity is, although related, a completely different field. I know if I was going for medical advice, I would want an expert in that particular field to help me, and that's the same with cybersecurity and IT. It is different. Also, it's not your IT team that are going to have to answer to clients if you get breached. It'll often be the managing partner. So it's something that should run right across the business, and everybody should know what's going on in your security environment. Really important to note that every single good, robust information security arrangement in businesses starts with the culture. our business at Lawyer Checker, we operate a very cautious culture. We're naturally suspicious. Our staff know that if they see an email that doesn't look quite right, then they should report it. It's very much led from the top, so everybody from the directors will treat information security as a priority. And we operate a really strict governance system where we know exactly what's going on throughout our infrastructure. We'll meet regularly to discuss it, and we actually have our information security arrangements audited regularly by third parties. It's really important that many people throughout your business, they know who's got authority, responsibility and accountability for information security, and it makes up part of people's job descriptions and roles, and it's not the responsibility entirely of your IT team. Information security is a business problem, not just an IT problem. Okay, so let's start having a look then at how we can prevent, detect and react to cyber breaches. So I think it's really important to know that if you're at the point where you're reacting to a breach, it means that something in your preventative measures hasn't worked. So you need to put things in place to prevent a cyber attack in the first place. That's the ideal. You need to have some methods of detecting attacks. So the average length of time from a criminal orchestrating an attack on your network and you actually finding out about it currently stands at just under 200 days. So that's a long time for a criminal to be sat on your network, observing what's happening before most businesses would ever know. And then we'll talk a little bit about what you should do should the worst happen. So preventative measures. Your first step in deciding what preventative measures you need is to understand what data your firm has that's of value and put measures in place to protect that. There's no point in protecting data that's of no value to you. If your email infrastructure actually is your most important asset, as I suspect it is in most of your law firms, that's what you should protect first. So in an ideal world where we've all got unlimited cybersecurity budgets, we'd protect everything. In reality, that isn't the case. So you have to understand what you have that's important to you. So know what your firm's assets are. And it's a really good idea to keep an information asset register so that you can document exactly what your firm has that's of value to you. I mentioned earlier that IT technicians often aren't security experts, although they do have some underlying knowledge. The same is often true of your IT suppliers. So it's really important that you know what questions to ask your IT supplier. It's your cybersecurity posture is still your responsibility, and I think it's really easy to assume that your your IT supplier is going to take responsibility for security. Ask them that question, ask where they're involved, ask them what their expectations are of where that responsibility lies, because quite often it's implied, but IT suppliers aren't, again, cybersecurity experts. Have a look at certifications. So I find for our business, Cyber Essentials Plus is really useful because it allows me to have a third party identify any vulnerabilities that lie on our network. And once we've gone through the assessment, we can close those off and we can then have a certificate that says that our infrastructure is secure against all the common cyber attacks. Protect your emails, so set up SPF, set up DKIM, set up DMARC in your email infrastructure. These are all protocols that are recommended by the National Cybersecurity Centre for all businesses. They're not difficult to set up, and it will stop your emails from being spoofed or misrouted, intercepted. All these little things all make up layers of protection for your business. Secure your websites. So if you're ever asking clients to log on or anything through portals, you need to make sure that your website's secured by SSL. The other thing I would say is that criminals can see really easily, and clients can see really easily, whether or not your website has an SSL certificate. So not having one on your website is almost an invitation to dig further, because we haven't got this very public protection. Make sure your patching's up to date. So I mentioned earlier about the NHS attack that was caused by a piece of malware. That attack would not have been possible had all of the equipment been patched and up to date. So make sure that your IT team or your IT supplier are reporting to you once a month that all of your operating systems and all of your software is patched, and that will stop the vast majority of malware attacks. Again, make sure you've got antivirus and make sure it's up to date. As you know, criminals are investing lots of money all the time into new types of viruses, and the antivirus vendors they're trying to keep up, so they release new libraries every day to stop new types of viruses. Make sure that they're up to date. Staff awareness is really, really important. So make sure that you've got a really good staff awareness program. Your staff should know how to spot a phishing email, and they should know what to do if they suspect that they've given their password inadvertently. They should know that when they're speaking to your clients on the phone, that actually they may not be who they say they are. So you've got to operate that staff awareness program to encourage everybody within your firm to take responsibility for security. Check out your third parties. Your third-party supply chain breaches have become really common recently. I think everybody will know about the British Airways attack that happened and that was much publicised, and that was actually caused by a breach that was in the supply chain. So your third-party security is as important to you as your own information security. So check that your third parties have got Cyber Essentials, check that their email infrastructure is secure, and check that they've got processes in place for if something does happen, that they'll notify you so you can take action too. Make sure that your systems are configured so that if somebody tries to log in a certain number of times that they're locked out, that stops that brute force attack. Use two-factor authentication where you can. Two-factor authentication you'll have seen on banking apps where you'll be asked for a password and then you will have a code text to a device. That two-factor authentication is an extra layer of protection. If somebody does manage to breach your password, it'll then mean that they still can't log in because they don't have the code. You can implement that on your login systems. Make sure you've got really strong HR processes. So if somebody leaves your business, their accounts are locked, they're locked down. When somebody moves job roles, that they're not inadvertently left with access to systems that they shouldn't have. So yeah, really strong HR processes are important for preventing cyber attacks from happening. It's really important that you're able to detect when something unusual in your environment is happening. As I've said, the gap between a criminal launching an attack on your infrastructure and you discovering it is often quite a long time. And this is where it's really important to work with your IT team and your IT providers. In order to detect an attack, you need to understand what's normal for your organisation. So your IT team need to know what the patterns of traffic are on your network, because it's often there that you'll find the attack. So they need to look for odd patterns of behaviour. It's really important that you encourage a no blame culture within your staff. Staff have to feel confident to report phishing emails or maybe mistakes they've made to enable you to take action. We're really really hot on this here, that everybody makes mistakes. If somebody does click on something, we need to know about it so that we can respond to it and take action to prevent an attack happening. If staff are reluctant to report errors or incidents to you, you can't react to them. And it's really important as well to speak to your IT team about having monitoring and alerting systems in place. So how will they know if something odd is happening? How often are they checking? It's much better to have that information pushed to pushed to you rather than having to go and check portals. So make sure those monitoring and alerting systems are in place. So should the worst happen, you're into react mode then. It's really important that you have a plan of what to do should your firm suffer a cyber attack. And in the next couple of slides, I'm going to go through some of the key elements of that plan. Make sure your plan's documented. The chances are when a cyber attack happens, it's not going to be during business hours. It's likely to be out of hours when things are a bit quieter and maybe everybody's not as vigilant. So make sure that plan's documented, and you need to share it with key members of your team and your key third parties. You're going to rely on those people knowing that plan and knowing how to respond when that attack happens. By the same token, it's really important to have it available. Your incident response plan is no good on your shared drive if it's your shared drive that's breached. So make sure that those team members and the third parties have it available in a format that will be available should your whole IT infrastructure come down. And again, really important, test it. With the best will in the world, you don't know a plan's going to work until you've tested it. At least twice a year, we run simulated phishing exercises here, and we run simulated cyber attacks, where we will actually carry out our plan, document the parts of it that worked, look where we can improve it. And it works a little bit like a fire drill. So the more and more you do it, the more your team know what to do. And having that coordinated response, may mean the difference between a successful recovery or not. So moving on now then to what if the worst happens. So step one is always step back and take control. Panic early decisions can cause you issues down the line, and it's really important to note at this stage that you are not going to be the first law firm to have been attacked at this point, and you certainly won't be the last. So it's really important to make sure that early on your actions are all considered and well prioritized. Our incident response plan, the first part of it is that we always nominate somebody who's going to record what happens. So nominate somebody in your team that can time record every single action. You might depend on that later. So if you need to look back at what happened during the incident, having those records is really important. And it's something that we stress here. The first thing that happens is we nominate somebody to start recording what actions are being taken. The next part then is to plan and prioritize. Don't rush to try and recover operations. If you rush to try and get everything back online too soon, you might have a vulnerability that's still there and can be attacked again, and you'll compromise more data. So it's really important to identify what the priorities are. Gather your team together. So ask for help from those people who are close to you, so your key suppliers, your IT providers. Consider you can contract with an incident response organisation who can actually help you to coordinate a response effort. If you don't have an in-house PR team, consider getting a PR consultant in to help you, and be honest about what's happened with your team. The people you employ will want to help you through a difficult situation. Agree a statement with them early on. So if you're asked questions by staff, clients, ask your PR person to come up with a statement that you can use and that everybody can stick to, so that you're not telling people inaccurate information at that point. You need to decide at that point, are there any operations that are definitely safe to recover? If not, can you still operate any part of your business with an alternative method? Can you actually still run part of your business over the phone? So just have a look if any operations are safe to recover. You then move on to investigating the problem. So start with what's been breached rather than the how. Working out how something's been breached takes a long time. It's really important that you start with what's been breached so that you know what data is now potentially in the public domain that shouldn't be. You'll need to decide early on in your investigation whether you need to report to the ICO. There's on the ICO website, there's a set of questions that will help you to determine whether or not you need to report to them. So I highly recommend going through that questionnaire before your cyber breach, so that you know if you ever are breached, under what circumstances you have to report to the ICO. You can then involve your IT teams, anybody else, in finding out how you've been breached. And again, it's really important at this point that you stress your no blame culture, because you want staff to help you. If somebody has clicked on a link that's caused an attack, you want to know about that, because only then, when you found out how, can you apply the preventative measures. So don't attempt to recover a breach system until you know that those gaps have been closed. There's nothing worse or potentially more embarrassing than a second breach of a system that had already been hacked. Phones and emails should come quite high up on your priority list. Prioritize the recovery of what you need to continue to trade. Ask your PR person to help you to tell your story. Quite often, businesses who suffered a cyber attack will suffer reputational damage because they're not prepared with their story to tell, and sometimes they're silent and they leave the press to come up with their own interpretation of what's happened. The more and more law firms talk to each other about what's happening in their industry, the more difficult it's going to become for cyber criminals to infiltrate it. And then it's really important then to review your logs, and learn from the breach and make improvements. So have a look through the steps that led up to the breach and make sure that you close those gaps for next time. It's really important to learn from those incidents. So how can Lawyer Checker help with all this? So AES and CBAC, by the very nature that you're on this webinar, you'll know about our account and entity screen products and our consumer bank account checker products. They're part of your overall risk management processes to help prevent these kind of attacks. Lawyer Checker are also a Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus certification body. So we can help to, well, we can give you your Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus certificates. We have consultants here who can help you through the process as well. We can offer vulnerability scanning, so we can actually scan your network to flag up any potential vulnerabilities for you that you can close off. We can help you to design, we can help you to deliver a staff awareness training program. We have one here as part of our ISO 27001 certification that we hold. It's really important to us, so we can help you to design one of those for your staff. We have our OnDMark product, which will stop your email domain being spoofed. It will stop criminals from being able to send emails to your clients that look exactly like they've come from you. This for me is a really, really great product, and I think we're starting to see quite a number of law firms now start to adopt this. We can offer consultancy, so if you need any advice, help, or you're not quite sure where to start, we have experts here who can help you to go from maybe having no information security program and not quite sure where to begin, right through to wanting to implement ISO 27001. We can help you with that too. So thank you very much for listening. My contact details are on the screen there. I will leave those up for you for a couple of minutes. Again, happy to take any questions via email after the presentation, but thank you very much for listening.